somewhere, so let's start. Or actually somewhere at my house, of course. Thank you. So, okay, we're gonna call the meeting to order. Introductions and agenda review. Patty Adair, Deschutes County Commissioner.
Megan Perkins, Bend City Councilor.
Eliza
Wilson.
Kat Wicker, City Councilor.
Eliza Wilson, Director of Runaway and Homestead Services at RJ, and then also the Chair of the local continuing care and organization solution.
Holly Heights, Neighbor Impact. I'm breath. Next issue. Board member, yes.
Thank you.
Tom Kuhn, Deschutes County Public Health.
I'm Colleen Zinsky, also with the Deschutes County Public Health Advisory Board. In this case, yes, today.
Jean Robbins with COIC and his problem.
Chris Ogren, Houseless Response Analyst with the Coordinated Houseless Response Office.
Nick Lima, Deschutes County Administrator. Everything to the Keith Cosby, City Resident.
Okay. Back to the wall, please. Yes. Hi.
Oh, hi. I'm Amy Fraley. I'm the Senior Program Manager for Houselessness Solutions at the City of Bend.
Thank you, Amy.
Nikki Dirty, Strategic Initiatives Manager, City of Bend.
James Cook, I'm Vice Chair of Oasis Village.
William Bailey, Deschutes County Sheriff's Office.
Linda Klein, Redmond, Housing Coordinator.
Chuck and White, Community Citizen.
We mean COIC.
And Mayor Concerned Citizen.
Linda Muir, Community Citizen.
I'm Josie Anders Mize. I'm the very new Executive Director at Oasis Village. Nice to meet you all.
Eleanor Gosnett, the outgoing interim executive director.
Oasis Village.
Okay, and Stephen, I want to acknowledge your. Do you want to give us your name?
My name is Steven and I am the AV technician here at the county.
Okay, thank you, Stephen. And Eric.
Yes, I was behind the post, sorry about that. I'm Eric Crop with Deschutes County Deputy County Administrator.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Chris, over to you. We have our leadership discussion and vote.
Yeah, so the bylaws, the CHRO bylaws, which were approved in the last meeting, say that at the first meeting of each calendar year, the CHRO board is to vote on the new or the chair and co-chair for the calendar year. So at this point, we're just hoping to hear from CHRO board members that might be interested in themselves participating as the chair or vice chair, or nominating a different member of the board. So it's open to you guys.
I will move to nominate Patty Adair to be chair. I will second that.
Oh, fantastic. Any discussion?
I just want to actually say that I'm really happy with Patty's thoughtful process in this. She's done a lot in all of the communities across the county, and she's engaged. I know with me personally, we have to in Redmond and being on board. And so I think that having that ability to have a community knowledge is important. Very much.
Thank you. Is
Stephen's council on?
Okay, yes, sorry. We probably need to acknowledge who's online. I didn't do that.
is she a panelist? Perfect. Okay.
Is Andrea there?
She's hopefully moving over.
He declined.
Oh, no.
Andrea, no, you can't decline.
Yeah, we probably should have given her really good instructions.
Say yes.
Yeah, try answering one more time.
Andrea, we need you. And I know Mayor Richter was not
Mayor
available.
is not available today, so he's not here.
Okay, so
Now she's
Perfect. While we're waiting for Councilor Blum, Chair, do you accept the nomination?
We should have Andrea.
Okay, I think I'm on now.
you are.
Okay, I agree. Patty Adair is a great chair.
Thank you very much, everyone. It's definitely not an easy, we're all doing the very best we can. We see the problem, and then when we have 0 degrees, we really know we have a huge problem in our community. So thank you for your kind words.
Chair, I would recommend a formal vote
Yes, I haven't got there yet. Okay, guys, all in favor, please say aye.
Hi.
Aye.
Aye, opposed. All right, so, great. Okay, so now we need to elect a vice chair.
Yeah.
Sure, I'll just make the next nomination. I'm going to nominate Megan Perkins to remain as vice chair.
And I'll second that motion.
Any discussion? Counselor Blum?
No.
Okay.
And Megan, are you happy with that?
I enjoy working with you and with all of the board, so thank you. Happy to serve as vice chair.
It is interesting. All these women, except for Dan, the Richter. Where are you, Dan, today? Okay, any further discussion?
I guess we could have just chose Dan.
Okay, all right. All in favor of Vice Chair Megan Perkins, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, unanimous. All right, so let's get on with our agenda today because we do have, we're looking at a lot. So first thing, agenda review. Any questions with your agenda today, guys?
No, I
Okay, I know we didn't get it in our usual Thursday the week before. And we'll want to know why we didn't get it early, but because it really does help. I know.
I know we got the packet in part, I think by Friday, which I appreciate at least knowing what the agenda is, but if we're gonna have a discussion about this now, I need the full packet by Friday at the latest, because having it 48, 36 hours before the meeting really is not responsible to the committee or to the office. If we don't have time to research and ask questions and have them answered by the time we show up at the meeting. That's my end statement.
Thank you very much for making that statement. I know I always feel so unprepared when they bring you a packet and you're sitting there, and it's always good to read it ahead of time. So thank you. Approval of minutes. Were there any changes to the minutes?
There were no suggested changes to the minutes that went out, but I'm happy to take any now.
Actually, I was wondering if I had made a comment in paragraph number 4 or section number 4 about due to limited rental vacancies. And at the time, I believe the rental vacancies in December, I think we were aware that it was like 9.2%. Because I remember Kat said, well, Patty, a lot of those people are not able to get into rentals, even though Ben's rental vacancy is historically very high.
Gotcha.
So did I not say that?
Maybe I mischaracterized
She did
it.
say that,
I
she
remember
did
that
say that out loud.
conversation.
I do
I
remember the
will
conversation.
change that.
Okay,
Thank you, Patty.
I just, I know Redmond is still really tight, but definitely there are changes in that going on right now. So with that one correction, is there a motion to approve the minutes?
Move to approve the minutes. I will second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, let's go ahead then with item number 4. We have Tom Kuhn and Colleen Sinsky.
Yes, thank you for having us here. I'm Tom Kuhn, and I also, in addition to being a staff member and manager for public health, I coordinate our public health advisory board, and I'm very fortunate to have with me our vice chair, Colleen Sinsky, who's been a fabulous addition to leadership of FAB. And anyways, I'm at first if you advancing the slides or he goes on it. All right, there we go. So anyways, we're going to be talking a little bit about the SPEAR minimum humanitarian standards. There was a document that FAB had worked on a few years ago, but we are focusing more on the principle behind that document than the document itself. If you can go to the next slide. A little bit first about the Public Health Advisory Board. It's a 12-member volunteer board that is appointed by the Deschutes County Commissioners. Members represent various aspects of healthcare and public health in Deschutes County. And our main goals are to increase public knowledge of public health issues and by advocating for different programs to get the word out there, to advocate for the services that we are actually delivering in public health, just to make sure that those services are supported and continued. And also inform and advise Deschutes County Commissioners on public health matters as well as the public health system in Deschutes County. And that's something we're really looking forward to doing more in the future and being a resource for the commissioners. And one other thing I just wanted to mention is that this topic in particular is a little bit out of the scope of the Public Health Advisory Board. Since this document came out, we are working a little more on some of our internal public health programs and really focusing on promoting the work that public health is doing at this time. If you could advance the slide. So why we're here today. So I just want to acknowledge our former chair of FAB, Dave Huntley, formed a subcommittee of FAB and worked on our minimum care advisory for the homeless document that was based on the SPHERE standards. And this is something Dave was really passionate about. And after the committee worked on this document for several months, we went to the commissioners to present it for informational purposes. No action was taken at this time, but we kept it on our advisory board website as a resource. And I did receive some attention from it, people asking questions about it and so forth. So that's kind of some of the action that we've taken with it. And then that's why we're here now, is that we were requested to speak a little bit about these minimum standards. And fortunately, having Colleen as a vice chair made it very easy with this presentation, as this is in her realm, in her working life. And anyways, she's the perfect person to present on this aspect. So. Yeah.
I'll just also add to the disclaimer that my role, you generally know me, is working with Central Oregon Fuse for an executive director, and our focus is more on permanent and supportive housing. I don't pretend to be an expert on addressing unsheltered homelessness, but because this issue is at the intersection of homelessness and public health, how I got tapped for this. And I also happened to, before I moved to Bend, live abroad, and I was working in refugee camps for a couple of years. So this is within my wheelhouse and kind of strange intersection of my professional role. You can go to the next slide. So FAB had initially made the comparison with what's called the SPHERE Handbook, and it is an international set of standards created in the mid-90s by groups like the UN, Red Cross, Red Crescent, to establish the basic minimum level of humanitarian standards that people need to survive and thrive and have access to basic human rights. Now, this document was primarily created to address the needs of crisis-affected populations, meaning people and communities who are affected by natural disasters and conflict. And it covers 4 areas that, I'm sorry, are both blocked on the screen and like size 6 font on your handout. But the 4 standards are covering areas water supply, sanitation, and hygiene promotion, or the WASH standards is one. And then food security and nutrition. 3rd is shelter and settlement. And 4th is health. So those are kind of like the 4 buckets of this handbook. You can go ahead and go to the next slide, please. And so just so that you have an idea and kind of conceptualize what the guidance is about, I'll run through an example. So within that like WASH standard, there's an example of the managing human feces in a safe way for both public health and individual health. And the document has pages and pages about each of these, like 100 or so standards. That includes like technical guidance as well as key benchmarks and indicators. So I'm not going to go through all of it, but just one of these standards includes things like the feces being contained appropriately from groundwater sources, having a maximum distance between dwelling and a shared toilet, the percentage of toilets that have locks, adequate lighting, percentage of toilets that are reported as safe by women and girls, and that all feces are disposed of in a manner that's safe to public health and the environment. You can go to the next slide. It's important to note that with this standard and any of the other ones, that it's not just about the toilet ratio. The guidance also clarifies that it includes protecting public health by incorporating hand washing standards and access to plumbing or other ways of managing waste, that there's a community education component and having access to microbial soap and hand washing stations. And the barriers that stop the transmission of disease are bigger than just like the access. So I kind of just stuck that really complex image on there to indicate that this is a technical aspect that is beyond my scope and beyond the public health advisory scope, but that it is a globally recognized benchmark and has some really solid and well-researched information about how to implement these safe protocols in a variety of settings. You can go to the next slide.
I do have a question. Is somebody in the room, can you convert the 50 meters? How many feet is that? 150 feet from like a dwelling to the toilets? You?
Sure.
Okay, 150. So the
That's the only way to
standard
convert it.
That a well has to be sited at
100 feet, that's what I thought. Yeah, the 100 feet there, but you're saying it's 150 feet in this case. So, and then I did ask you guys, how many porta potties do we have at like Juniper Ridge then? Or do we know? Because this is 1 per 20, so I'm just wondering if we have an adequate number following these guidelines.
We have 2 stations. We used to have 3, but we had to move one because of canal. I think we have 2 or 3 at each. I'll find a picture and let you know.
Okay, all right. I was just, these are the standards we need to be following them. Thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
Oh, no, you're fine. So we'll just run through some of the key elements about these minimum care standards and why it might be of interest to the Department of Health Advisory Board. Is the link to public health, including access to safe water, sanitation, hygiene, and medical care, protection of natural resources, and minimizing the negative impacts on public lands. Also promoting more positive community interactions between unhoused residents, public land stewards, general public, outreach workers. It also is based on the SPHERE guidelines, which are recognized as a benchmark. So relevant here to the extent that the community leaders decide that it is relevant. I'll speak to in just a minute. Actually, you can just go ahead and go to the next slide, please. One of the limitations of this is that there has not been a formal expansion and adaptation of the standards to urban American homeless encampments. So these standards were developed to support like tsunami victims in Thailand or people fleeing conflict in Syria. And I tried to do some research, but I wasn't able to find any great comparisons of it being adapted to long-term homelessness. There's also the document that Tom mentioned that Pat had created a couple years ago was created kind of in isolation, like without a whole lot of community engagement and input from local experts or folks with lived experience. And that the Public Health Advisory Board isn't in a position to make a formal recommendation, that we're really just presenting this for informational purposes. You can go to the next slide. So on the right side of this slide, I can continue with the example of toilets and focusing on just the ratio, whereas how you pointed out, I'm sorry, you pointed out?
No, that's fine. You pointed your ratio.
So given that there's around 1,100 unsheltered individuals in Central Oregon at the recommended ratio of 1 to 20, it means we should have roughly 59 toilets available. Again, this achieving this minimum set of standards is aligned with goals of various communities, stakeholders, and just could be one of the benchmarks used in deciding how services are allocated. You can go to the next item. Last, some of the best practices associated with thinking about the sphere standards in this context is first further assessment that SAB has not had and will not have capacity to really do that strong assessment of what's currently in place versus what should be in place to comply with this. Community engagement would be really important, and learning from service providers, public land stewards, the Coordinated Homeless Response Office Advisory Board, and other relevant entities. And based on that, making strategic policy decisions and investments. Last, the way to not have to deal with this would be to address unsheltered homelessness with housing and important like transitional housing and the whole continuum of supports that this board is working so well on.
Holly, do we have a new name for the Cleveland project?
We don't.
They don't have a new name yet, so, okay.
That actually is on my agenda for a meeting tomorrow. So it's Cleveland Commons to be named.
Okay, just wondered if we should,
Let you know.
Chair there.
yes,
We have no 9 porta potties out at Juniper Ridge.
okay. And what are we saying the count is out there?
I would say the estimate is like 200, and that would be 1 per 22. 1 porta potty per 22. If they're
That's pretty close to.
Okay, close is good. All right,
And just the Juniper Ridge project did consult with public health and use these standards as a guide for
thank you.
the minimum standard out of Juniper Ridge.
That's good to know. Thank
So
you.
really, we should just add one more. We want to. Actually, yeah.
Over.
Yeah. All righty.
So I guess it's really helpful. I think the point behind this was really to understand, you know, what some of the standards are and maybe where we need to go from here. You know, as we're talking about this regional RFP and you know, new supported and supportive camps, you know, what are some of the standards that we really need to be meeting right now for people that are unsheltered? And so this is a helpful starting point. And I guess I would just ask the board and ask our ex officio members too, like in terms of needing further assessment and community engagement and what are some thoughts that we might have of where we can go from here?
I'm going to echo Vice Chair Perkins. I think what are our next steps as far as taking this to a more holistic approach for our unhoused? Because I think we're in the right steps. Thank you, Eric, for letting us know that we actually consulted and are close to be in line with this. But it's the hand washing, it's the critical care to just have the basic human dignity, which sometimes allows them to then seek that transitional shelter and step outside of that space to find even safer ones. I think who would our best partners be to look at this and then maybe advise us as to some next steps would be a good choice.
And I think that this is so important. I put a little star next to it is that, you know, protection of our natural resources. And I know that's something that is very important to all of us, you know, in particularly in, you know, China Hat and in Juniper Ridge. So.
Well, I was just thinking China Hat. Are there any portable toilets in China Hat? It's the Forest Service. And I keep hearing about those problems out there and I'm wondering. So I know I had coffee with Holly last month and, you know, we need to talk about this because what is happening out there to our public lands, and we need to address it, no longer ignore it.
I did find one example of applying these standards to homeless encampments, and that was a peer-reviewed study from Public Health in Las Vegas area that was looking at the groundwater contamination from bacteria associated with human waste and the byproducts of illicit drugs and over-the-counter medications. They did find an increased ratio in the groundwater associated with, like in the watershed of those encampments. So again, Las Vegas has a much more concentrated population in a smaller area. I think that it's probably not a perfect comparison, but we're looking at what those.
So that would be an exceptionally good way to approach conversation with our partners is the damage they're doing locality through the groundwater and through this contamination. And so I know that seems like going around your elbow to get to your thumb, but sometimes that is the way you need to go to get their attention because it impacts everybody who's not even right there beside it. So I think a little more research there.
I'd love to hear, what are your thoughts?
Sure. Well, I think it's good that we are doing, planning to do further assessment around service provision and the community engagement piece with the high desert home and the plan for doing the high desert home. I think we are doing a lot of these things. I think that's a really good point with bringing that to partners, things that really do matter. And maybe we're not thinking that it's like the long-term effects of things. And then providing toilets out there and hand washing station really is preventing like a long-term crisis. Yeah. Yeah. But I had not seen this before, so thank you for bringing it to the meeting. And I do think this segues really well into the public partner roundtable and how we're gonna be engaging with partners on all of the projects moving forward. And this RFP that we're talking about. That was my initial thought.
I think to echo Kat's sentiment, I feel like this is a way to create not a concern, but an emphasis in our citizenry around the impacts of these things and seeing these resources for unhoused population not as a frivolous or a unnecessary handout, something like that, but creating that downstream impact for the larger population. And that while it's really focused on the health and safety of this population, it does have some major downstream effects, and creating that connection is huge. In terms of creating that buy-in, I also see it as really important foundational tool for disaster planning with our unhoused population. And it's all kind of woven into the active by name list and the important work that our street outreach group and camp outreach providers are doing, in that we are aware of the needs in the region. We're aware of the approximate counts in Juniper Ridge and the ratios. I think it provides a really solid foundational conversation piece with the Forest Service so that we can get something in place prior to having some sort of natural disaster, whether it's fire or Cascadia or something like that. And I think neighbor impact holds a really strange kind of space because we are designated as a FEMA participant in response to the natural disaster. So I think I'm gonna definitely take this back and do some internal work to bring back to larger conversation.
I think that advisory board would want to delve into a little bit more with their advisory board.
I would say definitely, you should set a table with some people in the China community, and the amount of the tonnage and that community is overwhelming. The destruction, the trees that have been taken down, and definitely it'll be good to be addressed.
My sons have been out in those woods playing for years and have both participated in cleanups, and just the heartbreak there for the forest that they grew up in. But also for the folks that are living there. They don't deserve to live in the middle of the dome.
Well, and then think of the folks that live in Woodside Ranch who want to sell their house and they can't get the house sold. So then there's that side of our community, and they're living on the edge of danger at times. It's overwhelming, and they're pretty exhausted. So any other questions? Andrea, do you have anything, Councilor Mom?
No, I don't have any questions. I agree. This information can be helpful with the public outreach, because when we talk about providing toilets out in the forested area, a lot of people immediately jump on well, you're just enabling more people to live in the forest by providing that service. If we can turn that around and say the purpose of that is for the health of the forest and for the health of the community, then we can look at it from a different perspective and hopefully change some minds on that.
Well, I've been talking about China Hat since 2018, and so that means that there haven't been toilets for a long time, and we've got a population there, so we can't keep ignoring it. Wonderful. anything else you guys would like, Tom?
No, thanks for having us here, and just basically that we think the sphere model is a really good model, as you had mentioned, as a starting point. And that's kind of the approach you're taking is a comprehensive approach, and that's what we think the direction needs to go. So,
Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Colleen. Please share with us when they have that new name.
I'll let you know.
So, appreciate you all coming. Okay, we do have item number 5, Chris.
Yeah, thank you. So next up on the agenda is some discussion around the draft RFP that staff have been working on related to the Public Partners Roundtable. Next slide, please. Thanks, Stephen. So at the outset, I just want to give a big thank you to some of those that are in the room and some that are not in the room. The folks listed on the screen here, the Forest Service, the Hughes County Sheriff's Office, the Homeless Leadership Coalition, City of Bend, the county, ODOT, City of Redmond, Bend Parks and Rec, and COIC have been meeting on a bi-weekly basis since early in the fall, working on the Public Partners Roundtable. And so we are in the process of a draft RFP that kind of brings all this work to a head. But it is quite complicated to run something like this through multiple entities. And so I just really appreciate the partnership and the support through the process. Next slide, please. So the key themes in the development of the proposal are what you guys had all, what the CHRO board had all approved earlier in the fall. The 3 main themes were community engagement, assuring the safety and quality of life for residents and community, and commitment to respecting and protecting public partnerships. And these are commitments that all of the folks on that original screen had made and have continued to, put forth throughout the process. Thank you. So we're working on the elements of the draft RFP, but at a high level, some overview for you is that Central Oregon Intergovernmental Council, COIC, is going to be facilitating the RFP on behalf of the coordinated office. So we're working in close partnership with all the member agencies, but it will officially go through COIC. That's kind of the plan as of right now. And really the theme of the RFP, if I could, put this out into the community for providers that are listening and might be interested, is what we're really asking the provider community to do is help us design, develop, and operate temporary shelter sites in Deschutes County. And those temporary shelter sites were included, kind of what we're interested in, were included in the packet from the last meeting, safe parking, managed camps, tiny home villages. There's several different options that the office has agreed to consider. And we acknowledge that this is a big ask to the community. We've had historic funding come to Central Oregon last year with Executive Order 2302. We know that funding is going to continue. We don't exactly know how much or what exactly the goals are of it, but we know that that continued investment is going to happen. And so this is another opportunity for providers with a lot of money. And we know that providers do best when they're supported through the process, right? And so we're trying where there's an explicit emphasis on making sure that this isn't some, 50-page super burdensome thing that we're expecting providers to take on their own, but more of developing some partnerships to try to address this crisis together. And so we're proposing, or I'm kind of proposing, that we do a 2-part proposal to reduce the burden on providers. And so part 1 would be site identification, development, and public engagement. And so we'd ask for a high-level overview, look at the properties that we've identified, look at the types of sites that we're willing to consider, or the developments that we'd like to consider, and just propose what you think is best. With that, we're also interested in how that provider would help us engage the public so that we can make sure we're communicating throughout the process and it's transparent. And then,
Chris, would that be part of the RFP?
Yes.
How are you going to?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes.
Right.
So part 1 is what we're asking applicants to tell us is what you think should go where and how you want to manage the public engagement for that and be a partner.
Great.
And then part 2 of that would be, we would work together. The group would evaluate the applications that came in. If we like the proposal and we like the public engagement, we would help move folks into part 2, which would be more of an implementation and like management plan of the site itself. And so what we want to avoid is a lofty RFP that says you guys have to spend a month responding to this and you may not even get any funding. I think that that's a pretty high barrier for a lot of providers. So the goal here was to break it into 2 parts to try to reduce that burden. But I'm super open to feedback on that.
And then at the end of part 2, if, let's say one of them is in Redmond, then I'm guessing more about the transition over to the city of Redmond. How would that? Or are we seeing, because we're not seeing this through and making decisions for Redmond.
Well, yeah, we did talk in the last meeting about running the RFP process through the coordinated office. And I think, yeah,
I think it's a question mark if we see what kind of proposals we get.
Okay.
We might, when we do contracts, what are the contracts with each jurisdiction?
Yeah, when we get to the part that's site identification, public engagement, and you see the path.
Yes.
Then by the time we're at implementation and program operations, whatever city or county element is being brought in, that they would be engaging at that level.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
That would be my.
I just want to make sure that.
And I also want to caveat too, and I spelled this out in the draft RFP, but it is entirely possible that there could be multiple awards. So it could be that there's not just one project that goes forward, that there's 2 or 3. Also entirely possible that I don't know. There's also an option we don't award one. That's in the RFP too. So here's the proposed timeline. And this
I just want to repeat multiple. I think that's really
Yes.
important.
Yes, absolutely.
As to quote Chuck's letter the other day, we have to think out of the box. So thank you, Chuck, for that letter. So definitely multiple.
Absolutely. And so here's the anticipated timeline, and this isn't set in stone yet. We want to make sure that this works with providers, just acknowledging there's more funding coming out, other responsibilities like cold weather operations. But this is kind of what we'd like to propose, getting the RFP issued in the next few weeks, offering that optional open house to folks. So myself and maybe a few other staff would go and present to providers, give them the opportunity to ask questions, provide feedback, things like that. And then we're proposing mid to late February, having the initial deadline for phase 1, having about a week to let folks know whether or not they're going to progress to phase 2, and then giving about 3 weeks for the phase 2, kind of how you would run your program, and then a decision towards the end of March, which would hopefully tee folks up to get things going right as the ground starts to thaw in the early spring.
Service providers, how do you feel about
Yeah.
ask that first?
I was looking at it and running through my historical Rolodex of things that are due and whatnot, and I don't see a lot of, I think it's a good time. I think it's good timing for service providers. The burden is going to be on some of those winter shelter providers or the shelter providers that have expanded operations. But I feel like they do have admin staff that functions regularly and are not on site often and participate in that. So I don't think the timing is bad at all, and I like the 2-phase. I think that helps people frame the work that they want to do and not be overwhelmed.
Yeah, and I've been a part of the roundtable from the beginning. And attended most of the meetings. I think it's been very thought out. The timeline and then engagement with providers. At our last meeting, we discussed in depth how we will engage with local providers on the process with RFP implementation. The 2 phases, I think, is great, and there's a lot of support. I think the intention is to really support providers in completing an RFP and roll out a program. So so that it's going to be successful. So, and the HLC, we plan to, if we do have an open house, that would be we're going to be supporting that effort and inviting providers. That will be like our HLC meeting for February. Great. So, yeah.
Do you have a date for that?
Not yet. Chris and I are meeting today at 2. So,
okay, just would like to get it in the record.
Yes.
Do we have a When does our next meeting fall in this project?
It falls, it's just before, the deadline for phase one submission. So our next meeting is,
The 15th?
yeah.
Okay.
And these, I mean, these dates are squishy too. So like if this is still very much a draft. So if you have opinions or, you know, if we want to, I mean, I feel like moving it up may not work, but you know, we have great,
I wasn't suggesting, I was curious.
Moving it up, but
Yeah.
I'm kind of thoughtfully thinking, can we meet that February 5th for the issuance of the RFP document? That seems pretty quick, given that we're sitting on almost the 20th. That's a 15-day window. Is that enough time to start this, or are we pushing out? Is my concern.
That's a good question. I think we could do it. We're most of the way done with the draft. We're meeting tomorrow with the public partners to tackle a few of the sections that we just need the group's feedback on. The timeline, the public engagement, and the budget are kind of some of those key things that I can't necessarily come up with exactly on my own. So, yeah, James.
I'm just wondering, is the RFP going to specify types of shelter you're looking for?
Yes. Yep. It'll be included in an attachment.
But
And
will that be on? Are you going to say like, we want this type of shelter on this property?
No. It's going to say here are the types of the developments that we're interested in, and here's a list of public properties that are available to develop on. You tell us what's best and put where.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Appreciate the clarification.
And we will have a little bit of, sorry, we will have a little bit of time in there to have some providers, if you're willing, James, look at the RFP to give notes before we put it out as well, so that it's makes sense to you guys as well.
So would the RFPs be for new programs or?
Yeah, to build another.
Okay.
Yeah.
So not in pre-K.
That's a good question.
It's about adding capacity.
Yeah.
So I think it's
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I would be happy with adding capacity.
Uniforms.
Part of that, and, you know, if that space already existed with the provider, then by all means, let's add.
As long as it fits in sort of the shelter types that we're looking for.
Thanks for that clarification.
Yeah.
And the good news is our next meeting in March is on the 21st.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
So we'll actually have our meeting and then
Excellent.
timing.
Things don't get delayed. Yes.
As long as we have no more blizzards, right?
Yes. And so these are the priorities that the public partners have discussed in the meetings that they really want to see. Like they're putting money in a pot to help accomplish this, and so they have a vested interest in these priorities as well. And that is not to say that we wouldn't consider a proposal that doesn't touch on these priorities, but likely the scoring would favor a proposal that does. Sure. And so utilizing the already identified list of properties, we spent a whole lot of time on that. And so really keen on that, but we would consider, to your point, Eleanor, like expansions of projects or a project on a private property. There is an express priority for local clients. We're looking for robust engagement and community outreach in a proposal, and we're also looking for a strong commitment to community partnership. So the more an application leans on those priorities and potentially more, the stronger it would be scored. Are there any questions about that? Next slide, please. And that's it. So thank you. Are there any questions or feedback? Like this is very much in the draft process. And so now is a great time if you have opinions, strong or not strong, about kind of how the direction of the RFP goes. It'd be great to hear.
Thank you for those dates.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm excited. I like the idea of utilizing either the already identified properties or those that are currently in existence and in process and or shovel ready. Things that we can get to the quickest.
Yep.
And we've seen, I mean, Oasis Village is a perfect example of community partnerships, right?
Yep.
I mean, that's how things work and get done successfully.
Absolutely. Councilor Blum, do you have any questions?
No, I think it's very well thought out. I appreciate the hard work that went into putting this together.
Thank you. And thanks to everybody that has helped along the way, and hopefully we'll continue to help.
Okay,
With that, I'll pass it over to Mickey.
Miss Mickey, thank you.
Sorry.
Thanks, everyone.
Nikki Dirting, Strategic Initiatives Manager from the City of Bend, and I'm here wearing my assisting the CHRO hat. And there are a couple of CHRO staff requests, if you could put it on the, there you go. So one is a request to add advisory committee members, 2 of them. And the second is to request for a $50K budget for community engagement strategies. So the 2 requests for additional seats on the CHRO advisory committee are, for one, for person with lived experience. This was a service provider and staff recommendation. This is to ensure diverse lived experience representation. And so it's a less isolating and tokenizing experience. And then the additional seat, the other additional seat is for federal and state land management agency. This is staff recommendation. We want to continue momentum, strengthen partnership, and streamline collaborative effort with U.S. Forest Services and ODOT, federal and state. You know, before CHRO, they had been meeting before CHRO public land agencies. It was like a silo project. And then now we're meeting with them also with the PPR, and they really do want to be part of the conversation, part of finding solutions with us to respond to houselessness. And this would be one of those great opportunities to streamline and bring them to the table to continue that. And then if you are aligned with it, we could update the bylaws, or if you're not, we could, you know, take whatever recommendations you prefer.
Super quick question. We have 2 at-large seats. Could they have not filled those 2 seats?
If that's your preference, I don't see any problem with that. I'm gonna look at Eric Rock because it's a county.
I mean, I think the idea though is that you want to make sure that we always have, you know, no matter what, these individuals on there. I mean, I think that they're very kind of different, right? One of the federal and state land management, in my mind, is I think we absolutely have to have someone on the advisory committee that is from, you know, an agency, or 2 seats for that. And I think the other one is, you know, lived experience thing. I think for I'm sure you see this with, you know, city committees and commissions. If you put someone on there that represents a very specific population, they're there by themselves. Oftentimes it feels like they're there to check a box, or that they don't feel comfortable in having their views and understood with the committee. So I think I understand the need to have 2 seats on there, and especially if this committee is about homelessness, to have 2 people on there that actually have the experience, have lived experience with it.
I'm not going to disagree with that, but I do have some concerns with continuing to enlarge the committee. Things move more fluidly and more quickly when you're nimble. So I want the voices to be selected with some care. And then I believe this adds to our expenditures. And I don't see that in here because I believe we approved $8,000 to incentivize people to show up to these meetings. Specifically too, for people with lived experience, this is a cost burden for them, gas, fuel, and time. So I don't see that in here either. And so I think that would be one of the things I would like to see. Anytime we have a request and there's a financial element, this office is responsible for it. So I'm not seeing what that looks like in here. And then the federal state land managing agency, they don't show up to take care of the forest. Are we sure they'll show up to the meeting?
They have been showing up to the Public Partners Roundtable. And yes, correct. The budget would be an extra $100 per month per person for the person with lived experience, for an equitable compensation. So that would be $1,200 a year. Federal and state land management agencies, from what I gather, they might not be allowed to accept a stipend because they are another government agency. So I would say, but let's be conservative and say that, if they say yes, then it would be $40 per month per person. So that would be one additional 4 times 12.
Ladies, any thoughts, concerns? I agree with everything that you had said about having 2 individuals. I mean, I provided that feedback to you, and that's one of the reasons it's on the agenda today. They have shown up to the public roundtable and have been good partners in that space. The folks at, with the Forest Service. And I hope that we could find someone. So would it be 2 seats?
Yeah, there's
Because
currently.
there's already one.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I think it's worth the funds, but it's not my decision.
Chris, what is our total of the advisory?
17?
I believe it's 12.
It's 15 currently, so it would
Yeah,
make it 17.
It's a big group. In my mind, and I'm just sticky wicket, I'll meet you halfway. We could add the person with lived experience, the other would have to take one of the at-large seats. I recognize they're showing up and they're having a conversation, but when we see an impactful contribution to helping with the destruction of our national forests and the people at China had, because that's the level we're gonna have to engage at, then I'll feel like the seat at the table and we can review it next year. Because this is an amendment to the bylaws, so this seems like this is.
I would like to go through this year. I'll never forget being at the homeless meeting in like 19, and there were like 60 people in the room, and J.W. Terry went up to the front of the room and he said, there are way too many people in this room to get anything done. So, let's stay with 15, and, I can understand where here would feel more comfortable, and perhaps there's somebody out there that would be interested, and if we could invite them and, find. And then at some point, I would say in a couple of months after we've actually had some meetings and see if it's still a necessity. But I don't want this group to be too big because we have to get something accomplished.
Yes. Just for clarification, are you saying yes to add one lived experience, but no?
No, I'm just saying start looking, but don't do it for a little while. I mean, maybe there's someone that you can invite them, and then.
So Patty, how about this? How about we use both at-large seats to fill this? And if this works this year, we look at, do we make that permanent positions and possibly open up the at-large to any other need we find in the following year? So we stay 1 year under the current bylaws with the 15, but we meet this criteria for the.
I think we'd still have to change the bylaws though, because if we're going from, if we're saying at-large seats are now.
They're taken.
These positions, I think we'd have to, no matter what we have to amend the bylaws.
Correct. The recruitment process for people with lived experience is a different process than a seats, which is very public, whereas lived experience is recommendations from our academics.
So I'll stand that I'm good with adding an at the lived experience, but the other.
Yeah, and I would just add.
But
we did announce a press release yesterday that went out saying that we're taking 2 at-large seats. So just want to make sure that we're not confusing the public if we're gonna only really accept one. Just, sorry.
And there's always that factor of keeping it odd.
Odd. Yeah,
Yes, so
about that too.
yes, so you have to keep it odd. Yes.
Andrea, what do you think?
We're all split here.
You're the deciding factor.
If the news release has already gone out, then we probably should stick to allowing people to apply for at-large positions because we don't want to have to walk that back. But I think having somebody with lived experience is always beneficial. Of course, it depends on the person. And since our homeless folks are in the forest, we always want to engage the Forest Service as much as they are willing to engage. So I think asking if they have been participating and want to continue to participate, then by all means, let's invite them to participate.
No, aren't they already in? I mean, Holly was going on and on about it, how important she thought it was. And as the fact that we have a couple hundred people out there, I definitely want the Forest Service part of this group. Do we have to do something special in order to help them?
Yes, so we only have 1 seat right now to include both ODOT, James Schultes, if that is the recommendation.
Right.
And then also Holly Juice, then we would need to have 2 seats.
That's essential if we're talking about.
Okay.
I mean,
So I'll sway on this one, but my caveat will be, we cannot continually add seats. You will become so top heavy, you will never be able to make a decision.
Never.
And I will add, when I spoke with Mayor Richard yesterday, he indicated that he was supportive of expanding the board to the 2 seats, if that's somethable.
All right. So any further discussion? Is there a motion?
I move to approve the 2 additional seats for the Borough Advisory Committee, 1 for a person with lived experience and 1 for federal and state land management agency.
With the possibility of adding the expense, $1,680 that we do have to pay. So,
Yes, ma'am, thank you.
I will second that.
any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the motion passes then. So,
Thank you. The next slide, please. For the next request is for a budget of 50K to execute the public partners fraud engagement strategies. If you can recall that Janice was in here at the last December 2023 CHRO board meeting and proposed the community engagement strategies. There were 2 different ones. So the first one would be the broad engagement strategies. The second one would be included in the RFP that Chris was talking about. And so the RFP, if we're looking at Chris's timeline, the notice of intent to award is around March 22nd. So their outreach would be after that. And then this outreach would be before that. And as you can recall, Councilor Blum was stating that we really need from her lessons learned to have community engagement early and soon, and that we need to also, the recommendation from the PPR is that we really need to do this, bring the community along as we're publishing the RFP, as we're creating these conversations with service providers, that the community doesn't feel surprised by it. And then also I've heard all of you say, oh my gosh, government is so slow with turning things around. So given that we didn't have a lot of lead time, we started leveraging existing project budgets from the Houseless in Deschutes Community Engagement Project, the Central Oregon Villages Project, and also the Envision Bend Project. So next slide, please. In speaking with you all, we learned that you want to do some sort of roadshow, or you want to do some listening sessions. Where is it? Community engagement, dialogues, events, media campaigns, talking points on myths so that we're all having the same messages. The campaign goals would be to deepen understanding of factors that lead to homelessness, directly address fears and concerns with practical information, increase community understanding of and trust in the point in time count, debunk myths and misperceptions and address bias, diminish stigma and marginalization, and build opportunities for connection and relationship. And looking at the budget estimate, again, we leveraged local projects. The Houseless in Deschutes was a visual and audio narrative that was about 10K. Central Oregon Villages, their community engagement included community input, door-to-door board meetings, open house, roundtables, one-to-one meetings, community meetings with Rotary boards, neighborhoods, and they also hired facilitators to host those meetings. They had produced video and radio public service announcement, 2 informational videos, broadcast news. They did then editorial pieces. They did created FAQs, listening station. They hosted listening sessions. Envision Bend, they had they hired consultants, and they also hired organization to help one-on-one interviews. They enlisted.
Mickey,
oh, go ahead.
I just want to point out that I am looking at phase 1 for what Nikki Merritt did, and their total was 41.5 for the first phase, and that included 15,000 for land lease and security deposit.
Oh yes, I removed that.
Okay.
So it went down to 30K.
Yeah.
So it was 45, and then I removed that portion where
Okay.
it's not community engagement.
Okay. Just want to be sure we're hearing the same story.
I know I was almost like, oh my gosh, it's the wrong number, but then I saw that down. So, oh, and then they did events, workshops, roundtables, developed, advised, and provided graphic design for final publication. So like none of us don't have graphic design expertise. So, and then also once we do start to develop these products, we may reuse them for future campaigns, or we may expand on it as we execute the regional strategic plan and as required by HB 4123 to centralize communication for our regional team. And this is also aligned with our CHRO strategic priority number 1 to enlist the community. And let's see here, and then that's it. Is there any other information we could provide?
Yeah, I don't have the numbers that Commissioner Dare has, so I don't know what the breakdown looks like. I don't have our budget, so I don't know what we spend or what we have to spend. And 50,000 K is kind of a blanket number, so I don't see allocation by project or by phase. And I think I would need to have some idea of that before I could just arbitrarily say, yeah, take that money and run.
It would be nice if we had, a budget breakdown at every meeting.
Yes, it would be.
I mean, I have absolutely no idea what has been spent. So it's just,
Is it okay if I share the information I have? So, our budget today is $761,000 roughly. We spend about $12,000 monthly for wage and benefits, and then about $1,000 for in-house resources with the county. And then tomorrow we are actually going to talk to the PPR team again, so that if you say, yes, okay, let's look at 50K of the budget, we're actually going to look tomorrow and say, hey, we've got 50K to work with. How do we want to prioritize the actions we want to take to fulfill on these goals?
I would rather you prioritize your actions and brought it back to us so we could see it, and then not just hear the numbers, but
Right, we need to see them.
Okay.
I mean, there's no reason as this office that we should not at least quarterly review our expenditures, but having an update anytime we're asked to spend money would be the most common sense thing to do.
Couldn't agree with you more.
Chair,
Yes.
well, we're happy to share. It's probably just below 800,000 is what is remaining in the funds. So it hasn't changed significantly from the fall.
I just know that, I mean, eventually with more staff coming on, things are going to start changing. So yeah, it would just be nice to have that with every meeting. And yeah, I mean, I think, I agree that this is really important. I'm struggling a little bit with like how amorphous it is right now. And so I would like it to be a little bit more like prioritized based on conversations with the PPR and even with us as well about what we'd like to be focusing on. You know, I mean, I would like to see us have a really robust website with resources and information about what this office is doing. I would like us, to even be on social media. I would, just a few things, but those are just things I would like to see. So I think I would like to have more of a discussion and follow them.
Well, and ultimately, the money that we spend as we allocate it, we're still the one who has to answer to it to both the community and the governor's office. So I think that it's really critical that we know how it's being spent, not oh, we just put it over here for some great thought process and have you come back and tell us. Then maybe some metric. It's not marketing. There's not going to be oh, we got this much in revenue for it, but are we getting the community outreach that we feel? Are more people volunteering? Are we seeing less pushback at these community open houses and more understanding? I think that's the type of stuff that we need to be able to take and move forward to make sure that the steps and actions we're taking are working.
Yeah, the budget I'm looking at, it was like outreach was 21.5 thousand and a ramp up costs were 8.8 thousand. So yeah, just see a number of 50,000. I mean, the state of Oregon's spent over $1 billion on the homeless, and our numbers have increased 22% if you want to talk numbers. So I feel really, I think it's important to see, okay, exactly what are we talking about spending?
Yeah. Oh, I'm happy to bring that at the next CHRO board meeting. This was like, if you wanted to
right,
hit go now, this is some.
Well, and hitting go, if this is a singular topic that we need a rapid response on, because I agree this meets our strategic goal and I would like to advance meeting our goals. I'm happy to have a public Zoom meeting in the next 10 days that meets everybody's criteria to review a detailed plan with the budget.
Excellent idea.
Well, especially the road show that we've, committed to doing. I mean, I think that falls in line with this.
Even within the next 7 days. But just more details, please.
Yes, and it would entail interviewing some consultants or organizations to see how much they want to do.
let's get some feedback from the
Yeah.
community. What are the costs out there?
Right.
I mean,
Here's
you
a
have
fun
to,
thought. Can we engage, for some of this outreach, an intern from one of our behavioral health programs that has some tech savvy, and some social media savvy, and can help you along the way? That is not a market rate commitment
Yeah.
to a large glossy project, which also may not digest well with the community.
yeah, I agree.
I'll have to defer to Eric and Nick regarding county behavioral health.
Or just somebody, you know, I mean, there's a lot of local talent that
This would be a good
maybe
toe in
is
the
not
water,
a
and we
flashy
might
marketing
create
consultant that we could.
a future,
Yeah.
future entrepreneur.
I can see where you're going with that.
And Brooke is actually doing a great job with my safe parking meetings with the community. Really, she's been really nice to work with.
So that you could use some, you know, on the outreach and a more linear and simpler project for the consultants that may not be as expensive. And more judicious and smart use of these funds.
Oh, okay. Okay, so we've got feedback, clear direction on what you want to do.
Yes, so we'll gather some feedback from the PPR team tomorrow, gather a little bit more information with regards to the budget and actions, and then also engage with an intern to see if they would be interested.
If it's an idea, I'm not saying you have to do it. I'm trying to think of cost savings and a productive way to still meet the needs that we have. And I think it's a great way also to bring more people into the community that have those needs served.
Yeah, it was just like the peer I met last week who now works for Deschutes County, amazing young man. So I'm sure there's some other people out there that are like that young gentleman. All right, so we have community updates. We're just a few minutes behind.
Thank you.
From our board members. Councilor Blum, do you want to go first?
We had our first of the winter cold weather shelter, emergency shelter over this last few days. And it was sort of a mixed bag in the sense that we didn't have very many participants. So you I know that behavioral health is always telling us our homeless in the forest are an independent lot and are pretty well self-contained. And I think that's what we saw, is that there isn't a lot of people that would take advantage of it, but I'm sure it was not life-changing, but very helpful for those who did take advantage. On the other hand, I think it does keeps us remembering that a shelter is not necessarily what our folks, the preponderance of our folks, especially those that are working, are needing. What they are needing is affordable housing. And so we are pushing as hard and as fast as we can on that side of it, hoping that we can get a lot of the people that are working in the citrus area, but still homeless, into more affordable housing. So that's always our goal. So that's
and
it.
it's affordable housing that allows pets. I think that's really, you have to add that point. That's what I was reading in the Nugget last night anyway.
Right. It's always difficult to find a location that works if people have pets. But there has been some people in the community who have said, well, we'd be willing to take pets if people were willing to give them up to a stranger. I mean, that's always the hard part, is people don't want to turn their pets over to somebody else, but we tried to accommodate it where we could.
Thank you so much for doing that. It was incredibly beneficial, and apparently the state really stepped in too to help. So great to hear Haley was part of it. So,
well, I've got the players in the room, so I should probably let Eleanor and James talk about Oasis Village and the success that it is, and their new director. So if you want to give 2 seconds of what we have
actually on our agenda.
On our agenda. So that's really what we have done. I will say thank you to Shepherd's House and y'all for stepping up. We had a frostbite. We actually, did have a fatality, not because they were homeless, but because of the extreme cold weather. And I think it's important to know that
these resources now are extremely taxed because they had to respond to this extreme weather event. So for the people listening, not the people in the room who already know, the community's help and reallocating funding and resources to our providers is one of the most important things right now. This was our first winter weather event. We probably will have another. And it's just important that they have either the funds, the food, or the warm blankets, coats, hats, and shoes, and the things that they need to help make our people that are living in house more comfortable in these situations. So that's my 2 cents for today.
Thank you for 2 cents. Megan.
I mean, I think I'm just really filled with gratitude at the response from, speaking for Bend, people in Bend who either donated their time or their money, or clothing, or fed people, who, you know, gave people rides. I'm so grateful to CET for getting, you know, transporting people to these emergency shelters. You know, First Presbyterian for stepping up, and all the volunteers from the Unitarian Church and elsewhere that helped that shelter go, and then extended another day, which was also really key, and even add more capacity. At Shepherd's House for taking as many people as they possibly could. Just knowing that this was just, this was such a scary time. And I, think of how cold you were for just being outside for, 5 seconds, and imagine, that being where you're living. So in my mind, I'm filled with gratitude, and I'm also, sort of filled with, a renewed vigor to just wanting to get more and more people into safety with the extreme weather that we have in our community.
Yes, as I've said for a while, winter weather is 7 times more dangerous than summer heat. And I remember in January of 2014, it was 29 below in Sisters. That was a record, but thank goodness we didn't get that cold. But I spent a lot of time outside, and I kept thinking about what was going on. I talked to Charlene a lot about what was going on, if there were things I could help with in the Sisters program. And thank you all. Thank you for City Council for making that happen as quickly as you did. I think that's, the forward thinking, the immediately quick response that happened was, thank goodness we did that. And we have a lot to be thankful for if we could just not get quite that cold again. It's just incredibly challenging, and let's hope that flexibility continues to reign here in Central Oregon. We have a provider update. Eleanor, would you like to step to the table, identify yourselves, please? Thank you. And Jean?
I'm Eleanor Gusnett. I've been the executive director for Oasis Village, and this is Josie Anders-Mize, who is now the executive director for Oasis Village. We had a little overlap time, and so she's new to the program, but we're so excited to have her here.
Press a like too.
How
did you all do that this morning?
Oasis Village.
It's Oasis Village. Okay.
So thank you though for inviting us and having us here and the opportunity to share about the program. And just right off, we opened on January 10th, last Wednesday, and I've been going for this week. So I'll go through this quickly. I know you're finding this valuable, and but again, thanks for letting us share. So this is an overview of the site, a rendering before it was actually there, and I'll go through. You can advance the slide. A path towards home, our low barrier initial entry through the coordinated entry system, and then after the first 90 days.
I have a question about the rendering. Are those fenced areas for pets to play in?
I will, yes, and I'll get to that later, but you can look at that.
No, I just wanted to be sure.
No, we've got a couple fenced areas, and it looks kind of odd here, but I'll explain that.
Okay, thank you.
So we're looking at men and women, 1 to 2 per. They were called sleeping units when we were building, but we're calling them cabins. They can stay up to 2 years. And we'll be working with our case manager and setting goals. Several of them have wanted to start and have make some progress towards some changes. So they'll all have individual work plans for their stay. We'll provide personal case management, and we have one peer support specialist that has been hired, and a couple of peer mentors that don't have the peer support certificate, but that will be working. We'll look at life skills, we'll look at employment assistance, help with that whole housing navigation piece, but then also offer just some high interest classes and opportunities. Already we're looking at cooking things and food storage, things that with our kitchen they're able to do and they haven't been able to do, but there's a big interest in cooking already. So that we hope a lot of things going on. We're working with Best Care, we're working with Room Rock, working with Ideal Options for harm reduction, and we'll continue and hopefully expand those partners. And I have to say here, the partnerships that worked with Oasis and the partnerships that were developed were key to getting this program up and going. Being able to work with the city of Redmond, being able to work with Clayton and Simplicity Homes, being able to partner with Redmond High School in their building program to help build 4 of these units. Part of Oregon Corps to build 4 or 5 more. Just the service organizations, churches, and individuals. It's been so rewarding and affirming to have public and private and government individuals all come together for the good of the community. And I just think it's such a strong model of that. We need to do that.
Eleanor, don't forget the county actually.
And the county
did no. And we did a couple $100,000.
$367,500.
Yes. Thank you. I just want that on the record. A lot of times we don't get that.
So when I skip, sorry.
It's okay.
I was gonna really highlight it in bold lights later. But yeah, all those partnerships. So the next slide just shows the site. Most of you probably, I hope have been there, but know that it's right along Highway 126. And Oasis is that little tiny dark green. Hopefully the next step in that will be the RV parking area. And then the larger, I think it's 45 acres of tax lot, looking perhaps managed camp in that area.
That's from the county too.
Yes, from the county.
You know,
I'm leaving. I'm going out.
Eleanor's not saying that what we need is 21st Street.
Yeah.
And that will allow the RV site and then the managed camp beyond that.
And we need a left-hand turn lane on the
Dad's not here, but we'll get.
I know.
At least we did get money for the utilities.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, and actually, that was really great to work with as far as being able to cut the highway and not bore under it and do that. So, and thank you, county.
Okay.
This was bringing in some of the sleeping units that, of course, Hayden helped us. They're on cement pads and then they're anchored to those pads. And they're 8 by 1,200 square feet. But when you actually are in them, they seem plenty roomy. But show some of the construction. If any of you were at the groundbreaking on October 3rd, it was bare land. It was sage. And there's still a lot of bare land, but now there's people living on that land, warm and safe.
So does each unit have a heater in it?
They do.
Okay. What about air conditioning?
Not air conditioning. They have a window with a screen though, and a door.
Okay, because you know, to the Veterans Village, we actually added air conditioning units. So something to think about for the future.
In fact, one of the comments we heard from several of our participants moving in, like, oh my gosh, there's a heater.
Yeah, that's critical.
Over and over. And of course, they got to move in right before, this snow down.
Yeah.
So the next picture, this is our community building. It has in it 4 restrooms. showers, one has bathtub, that got a lot of comments too, from guests with you, and they went, oh, I don't know when the last time I had a bathtub was. And, it has a nice kitchen, 2 ranges, microwaves, 2 microwaves. Another room has a walk-in freezer and a walk-in cooler. It has room for conference rooms, and then there's just a great room gathering area for folks. There's also offices that are part of the community center.
Is it a triple wide?
It is a triple wide.
Okay. How does food work? Like,
So the food right now during this really cold time and hard to get out. We're working with Jericho Road, another nonprofit in Redmond, and getting evening meals.
okay.
What we really want though, that our participants, one of the whole purposes is for their independence.
Yeah.
And so many of them have SNAP benefits, and I know a couple of them went to St. Vincent's yesterday and got food boxes. So we're really encouraging, and we'll be encouraging going on forward that they prepare their own meals and they can work together and share those, but that's a part of
Absolutely.
becoming independent parts of our community. So
Oh, you answered my question. You've got a laundry facility.
okay, we have 3 stackable, only 2 show there, but we have 3 stackable washers and dryers. That's a picture of the ADA bathroom, and then one of the other ones. This is an area that at night we close off the main room and the offices, but this has access at night for restroom and wash facilities. The rest is open all day. Next slide shows shows the walk-in freezer and cooler, and then a part of the kitchen. Opposite this freezer and cooler, we have some shelves, and every cabin has a number, and they have bins for their dry goods food. So they can store, our participants can store their food with their cabin number, and the same in the cooler and the freezer have containers for them to be able to store things.
I was gonna ask you that. That's great. We do that at grandma's house too.
Okay.
Yeah, where they have their individual space.
We have some communal, we have a pantry, and we've just put some kind of communal food. We've gotten a bunch of soup and cans of chili or ramen or things if they run short. And there's also a communal refrigerator for milk, coffee creamer, those things. So everyone can access that. But we thought it was important that they have their own storage for their own food. The next slide shows a part of the great room with the big sofa. We now have there's a rug in there. The thing behind the sofa was assembled there. It's a bike rack. It's outside.
Oh, okay.
Looks a little odd. And then the other one is our dining table. That's there. And the next picture shows we went ahead and had Hayden put in 10 additional pads that have electricity to them for expansion. That top picture though is a picture of the dog run. So it's all fenced, and we do have a couple dogs that are with some of our villagers out there now, and a couple cats, but it's a nice big area. And we also have dog crates for them. So as they go to work or need a place for their dog, we're trying, if they're not in their cabins, we're asking them not to leave their dogs alone in there. So there's places that they can be created. So, and then the next picture shows the completed village. We have 17 and one more, I think, coming in either today or tomorrow. He's being discharged from St. Charles. And you can kind of see some of the pads there. Our goal is to add 4 to 6 more sleeping units by maybe June, and then the rest of the year add all 10. So we'll be at a total of 25 cabins there. This shows, next slide shows the interior of one of the cabins. There are 10 single beds and 5 double beds. And at least at this first round of participants, we have more singles. That's why we're at 18 instead of, we have capacity for 20, but we only have a couple of the double units that we have couples in. And so we did not want to leave any units empty. when we have such a great need. So there are a couple double units that have single people in it, but they're there. And there's a picture of that one you can see by the door, right by the desk, is the little electric heater. We have storage that we've provided under the bed, those tubs under there, and they can add more storage if they would like. And outside of each unit, there's quite a large storage bin that's lockable and waterproof, and it turns into a bench. It is a bench for better weather days. So there is good storage. The next picture just shows more of the bedding. One of the churches in town, Zion Lutheran, their women made quilts for every one of our villagers. And so this picture was a great picture to show all the different quilts.
Is that the same group that does the quilts for Shepherd's House?
There's lots of groups.
Really?
We have like 2 groups that do quilts for Grandma's house and the loft too. There's lots of quilter groups in Central Oregon that they pretty much have like give us all the like quilts that we need in all of the shelters. That we have.
That's amazing.
I don't think that's the same group, but yeah.
So from there, the last one shows another picture. Thank you, Redmond. Thank you, County.
Editing the slide.
I do want to go back to the very, very first, because one part that wasn't mentioned. So there is a fenced area for that very first, yes. So the very back
Yes,
corner,
what's that?
that is the dog run pet area. The other fenced in areas for a community garden, and we're going to be working with the Deschutes County Master Gardeners and the Redmond Garden Club. And then the other fenced, you don't see all of it, but the fenced in the gravelly area is an RV trailer storage area. So folks that have an RV, they can't live in it while they're there, but they can sure store it. So they don't have to get rid of all of that's their belongings, that's their fallback plan. So there's a storage area for that. So
which corner is that at?
It's right in the front on the right hand side.
Oh, on the right,
It's
that
quite
place.
a large area.
Okay, this is for the RV storage.
RV storage.
What's the yurt like?
The yurt is, yes, it is a yurt that we'd like to add an additional area for folks to gather.
Oh, okay.
And so community space. And just really quick, that first day, we kind of phased in. We had 4 or 5 villagers move in, and we gave them tours and let them have time to get settled, and then did a whole orientation. And the next morning when I got there, Betsy was there. One of the villagers was cooking breakfast. She made biscuits and gravy with homemade biscuits and pork. And Allison McKinney, our case manager, was there, and she said she saw her with this fresh ground pork, and she said, just so a reminder before you need to wash your hands before you go on. And she was going to make coffee, I think. And she said, oh, I know that. She looked at her hands and she said, I can't remember the last time I had clean hands to cook. Sorry, it makes me emotional because these folks have, and she was teary and emotional too, because her hands could be clean to cook. And then there were 5 or 6 people sitting around a dining room table, and they were all sharing food and eating. And that for me puts the human, talking about programs, we look at pictures, we look at budgets, we look at grants, but these are the human beings that are living and are so grateful. One of them's on oxygen, and he has said every time I see him, thank you so much. Thank you. So that's the main thing that I want you to know about all of the villages and the places that we're being able to provide for people to get them out of the dirt, is that they're grateful. And the showers, the heaters, one of you said, there's curtains in the privacy factor that we don't often consider. So, we're up and going.
Thank you so much.
Oh
Thank
gosh.
you.
Bravo.
Thank you, Josie.
Amazing.
Thank you. And we do have, we should add some time for public comments. Is there anyone in the room that wants to make any public comments? Yes, Lynn? Do you want to come up and identify yourself? So you can go into the record, please. Thank you.
So my name's Lynn Morgan. I'm a member of the Unitarian Homeless Outreach Group. I'm a volunteer at Shepherd's House. Go out to China Hat once a week. And I'm also helping however I can with the Gales property. So the comments that I hear from the public, from my friends and neighbors, and that I see on the news, their biggest problem with homelessness is people camping by the roads, garbage. I hear that the most. We don't have the only solution that we apply to that is we move them, which accomplishes nothing. And people who are living in tents or in broken down trailers, RVs that don't run, we don't really have, if you run them off, there's no place for them to go. And a lot of those people, for whatever reason, they don't want to live in a dormitory shelter. And we don't have a good solution for those people. Oasis Village works for 18 of them, but there's hundreds in China Hat. And I've looked through the information from last month's meeting about the public locations that are available. And I think in the city, there's two that would allow tents. Very, very limited a space for tents. I think that another thing about that population is that's the neediest population. The people that are living in RVs and trailers that run are in a lot better shape than others. I think we need to prioritize space for that population because that's the biggest impact to public perception as well as the neediest group of people. And one thought I had was incentives for private property for that sort of space. I don't think that there's any work on trying to get private property. Craig Hales has stepped up, but I don't think the other organizations are looking for private property. And so I'm wondering if there could be some sort of incentives for private property.
We're actually doing a huge push with the churches in Bend because the capacity there is really under what it could be. So
that's safe parking.
Yes.
That doesn't really fit the needs of the people that are camping on the
Parkway.
Yeah, on the parkway, people that are living in broken down trailers.
Will they go to Gales? Will they, if we ever are so fortunate, will they go there?
Camping is not allowed. Camping in tents is not allowed on county property. The new regulations that apply to the Gales property doesn't allow tents, and it only allows vehicles that are licensed and operating.
So what will we have to find to make it a home for them?
If evidently it is state regulations that prevent putting tents out there. So I believe it has to be in the city. And it's the property that's been identified is very limited that would allow that.
Well, thank you for pointing that need and issue and for your prioritization, because I know you do a lot of really good. So I thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren.
Is there anyone else in the room that wants to comment tonight?
My name is Ed. You're a resident of Bend. I have a comment and I have a question. My comment is, before things are implemented, such as porta potties, we need to have real numbers. For example, somebody mentioned earlier, there's 200 people in Dirt World. There's a hell of a lot more than 200 people in Dirt World. So there probably is 300 or 400 people in Dirt World. So if you're going to put porta potties out there, put the right number out there. And that's true with any implementation of any fix. We need to have real numbers and good data. And I don't think we have that. I think the time count is somewhat limited, but we need to really understand what the entirety of the problem is before we try to implement solutions. The other thing that is important is certainly from a public perspective, we need to know the utilization. There's 600 beds supposedly. How many of those are actually being utilized on a regular basis? This is really a question about accountability. We've spent, well, I did a forensic audit some months ago and came up with about $30 million that have been spent on homeless issues over the last probably 18 months. We need to know if these facilities are actually being utilized. And I'd like to see that on a monthly basis so that somebody can publish which facility is being utilized in what capacity. Because if we continue to pour money into these things, the public's going to get very upset. It's like having a hotel with empty rooms. We need to be able to make sure money's going to the right places.
And I would just refer you to every month, Amy really does a shelter report for the city of Bend shelters that has that information in it.
For the city's supported shelters. It is presented to council. I'm happy to put it out there in a more user-friendly public. That's a great idea. And I'll be sure to take that back. We're just migrating our website, so that's perfect timing.
Yeah, if they could be on the website so they could easily access it, we let people know.
I think it's
Absolutely.
important to have that out there.
They do want to know.
Yep. And I know that I think the old mill suites or whatever, there was septic or piping just integration problems. So I don't think all those units have put into effect yet, have they?
I cannot update that. I would defer to Chris on that project.
Those are rehousing units and not shelter units. But
Yes, of course.
yes, I know the distinction there, but they are being worked on right now. I don't have a current number of when they'll be available or how many, but I do know that in the MAC meeting we had yesterday, we shared some pictures of one of the completed units. So I know they're getting close.
Well, I had lunch with Deb Fagan and she told me there was a disintegration of the pipes. So they got a couple units done for the timeliness of the, what is it, January 10th?
Yeah.
But the rest of them are still in process.
Yes.
That's, so it was 70 of them total. So
that's the goal.
Yeah, we definitely rehousing units. Would love to have them available sooner. Is there anyone else? Public comments?
I have one person on.
Okay.
Awesome.
Please go ahead and identify yourself. A person online with the raised hand.
I think they're getting promoted, right?
Okay, thank you.
Hello.
Hello.
Excuse me. It kind of crashed me out and then it zoomed me back in. So my name is Jenny Lingard, and I've performed over 2 years of research. And I'm going to piggyback off of Ed Muir's comment. Our communities need meaningful, accurate, and timely data with measurable results that is shared. This lack of transparency creates confusion and causes pain within our communities. We know millions are getting spent, but is it getting better? I know there's a affordable housing aspect, but that's not the only issue the homelessness community is facing. We all know and agree that annual point in time count is flawed, and it's only one snapshot in time. There is Built for Zero that started back in November 2021 through Neighbor Impact. And it is a software that has a more robust case management component than HMIS. Lane County has Built for Zero dialed in and has 5 times the homeless population. And they have forests and they have rural areas. They were able to achieve wrapping the arms around getting Built for Zero implemented and also relied upon. This county placed this information on an open source platform where anyone can review the data at any time. I suggest a portion of Charo's budget fund whatever holds back Built for Zero and therefore the transparency. This is a form of community involvement and engagement. Another suggestion is for Charo to receive metrics from all the shelter operations, including safe parking. Metrics like how many individuals have progressed to the next stage or level, some or most of the PIT metrics, progress made, what's working, and so on. Then Charo can distill it, package it up, and distribute it with a periodic like rhythm. Maybe it's monthly, perhaps quarterly, and it can be placed on the Charo website. It can be emailed through the county and all 4 city channels. It's a simple way to have people understand what is going on. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. Okay, no more end of our public comments. Okay, we've got a touch over. Any other items?
Can I just thinking about talking about money and I was just wondering if the board thought it would be helpful for maybe the next meeting to talk about the current legislative session and any money that we anticipate coming in, from either the governor, if we can maybe have just an idea for next month's
That's a great idea. Thank you. Yes.
Right, because it's going to be in February and March, and then it's going to be done. So
yeah, helpful to kind of see what we're doing.
Okay, so it would be perfect on the agenda. Okay, so the next meeting, what is it? February 15th. Okay, all right, February 15th, 11 a.m. Please be here, and thank you all for coming today.
It's getting to look. Yeah, they just announced they're closing COCC and OSU Cascades because of the rains.
Right here.
I don't know, but yeah.